oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from knowledge that doesn't benefit. You have to benefit. Whatever you study, there must be some benefit. If there's no benefit, it's a waste of your time. You should throw it away. So I think that in the life of Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik, Shabazz, there are infinite number of lessons. And today, maybe I will talk about maybe 4 or 5 of them. There are many, many of them. But I will talk about the lesson of Malcolm in light of Quran and Sunnah. Let me just recap a little bit about Malcolm. Malcolm was born May 19th, 1925. And remember, I mentioned in the first class, Malcolm wasn't a prophet. He was a human being. He wasn't a saint. He wasn't a prophet, but he was a human being. And therefore, Malcolm, like the rest of us human beings, were a product of his time in his life. So you have to go back in May 19th, 1925 and ask yourself the question, what was going on? Martin Luther King, which was a contemporary of Malcolm, once said, "He who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man up front." He who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man up front. What did I just say?
He who is behind in a race must run fast to get in front.
I love it. Let's go to your brother and see if he can help you.
He who is behind must run faster in a race.
I love it. This is great. This is good stuff. He who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man up front. Now, every year in the NBA, National Basketball Association, NFL, National Football League, right? NHL, National Hockey League. All of these sports, every year they get new players, don't they? What determines which team should choose first? Out of the college ball players, athletes, how do you determine which team chooses first? The what? The wackest team. What in the world is the wackest team?
The one that finishes last.
The one that finishes last. That makes sense. The one who's behind the race. Why does that make sense? Because if you continue, if the team that's number one, they win the championship and they choose the first choice. Last year in the National Football League, I think everybody thought Reggie Bush would be the first one chosen, right? But Reggie Bush was one of the great athletes in college. So the worst team got the first shot. Now, racism is real in this country. And people have defined racism in many ways, but racism has been described in general when people think that one race is superior to another. Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, said, "An-nasu kulluhum banu Adam wa ana min turab." An-nasu kulluhum, mankind, every one of them are the children of Adam. And Adam was created of dust. And he said there's no superiority of a black man over a white man or a white man over a black man. That's what he said, the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. Allah mentioned in the Quran, and this is very important for us to know, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. O mankind, we, Allah, created you from a male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you may know one of you. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah are those who fear Allah the most. So from an Islamic perspective, there's no superiority of a black man over a white man, or a white man over a black man, or a red man over a brown man, or a brown man over red, right? As Muslims, and that's important for us to know, because in the old days, we thought, see, it depends on who you were. If you were a white man, you thought yourself superior than the black people on the face of the planet Earth. And some black people thought black people were superior. But what Islam did, it gave us the right criterion to determine authentic superiority. And authentic superiority is only in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everybody understand that? If racism is that one race thinks itself better than the other race based on color, what do we mean by institutionalized racism? Because what we had in America wasn't just racism. Racism is bad enough. What's racism?
Discrimination.
Discrimination, yeah.
Against someone's race.
Against someone's race, all right. You agree with that?
Agreed.
Agreed, okay. Well, racism is bad enough. Racism exists in America. Brother, what's your name again? Idris? Idris, I want to let you know, Idris, that the whole world is listening to you. It's not just people, I want to let you know. It's not just people in the classroom. There are literally people right now around the world, and they are both looking at you and listening to you. Idris, what I want you to explain to the class, which is a critical point that needs to be emphasized, that not only do we have racism in this country, we still do to a degree, but during the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, we had institutionalized racism. And can you tell us the distinction?
Racism, I guess, would reflect itself in terms of individuals. If you're talking about institutionalized racism, it would be on the political, economic realm. So that means businesses, in the political offices that exist, school systems. So it basically means that you have all the institutions that's supposed to help or further the people's cause actually inhibiting them.
Excellent. Now I want you to imagine this. And I want you to remember Martin Luther King's quote, "He who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man up front." I want you to imagine this. We had in this country what is called the Congressional Black Caucus. The Congressional Black Caucus was an organization set up by African American people in the Congress. And what they wanted to do, they wanted to get together and form this union, this caucus that would protect the rights of African Americans. Congressional Black Caucus. Now, but you have to remember there was a time when there were no black people in politics, or in the government. So I want you to go back to a time where not only did you not have African American congressmen, mayors, and those kinds of things, black people couldn't even vote in this country. You understand what I'm saying? I want you to go back because I want you to see the birth of Malcolm Little. What was going on in his time, and why was he a product of his time? And I want you to go back to a time where there is institutionalized racism. Imagine, where do you live? In Yonkers. You live in Yonkers too? You live with him? I want you to imagine your area, the area that you live in, is it integrated? Who lives in your area? Mixture, okay, mixture. Any African Americans? Few? Hispanics? Jews? No Jew? White people? Yeah. Asians? I want you to imagine that you want to move in an area, but we don't allow black people in this area. And if you get in that area, we'll burn down your house. So now you had discrimination in housing. Black people couldn't go anywhere. Black people were confined in the ghetto, in the worst parts of the city. Black people, oh yeah, this is not your neighborhood. And if you had the audacity to go in a white man's neighborhood, you may lose your life. So we had discrimination in housing. I want you to imagine, what school you go to? You go to Yonkers High School. Integrated, isn't it? There was a time, you don't remember this, there was a time that black people couldn't go in any school. They had a forced integration. Those are the days of segregation. Black people couldn't go to any school. Black people had to go to a certain kind of school. Well, what does that mean? If black people went to the worst schools, then that means after they graduated, what kind of jobs can they get? They used to that old saying, the black people were the last hired and the first fired. You remember those, right? So imagine this, right? You go get a job, and they said, I'm sorry, we can't hire you. They're not going to tell you, we're not going to hire you because you're black. But that's the reality. So you had institutionalized racism, right? In terms of where you go to school, in terms of where you live, job opportunities, you couldn't vote, and all of that. And on top of that, you complaining Muslims that they discriminating against us. They pulled me over. I was trying to get on the plane and they pulled me over. Oh man, come on. You know what real suffering is? Take a look at this. You see this on your right hand side? This is what you call a lynching. Do you know that our Senate last year passed a resolution, an official apology to African Americans for not passing legislation to protect black people from being lynched? This was a very common thing, black people being lynched. This is real. And I think, I can't remember the stats, I can go check, but I think we had something like 1,700 black people lynched that they knew about. How many other cases that we didn't even know about? And why were they lynched? They were lynched only because they were black. You know they had laws. Probably. People thought you only lynched black people in the South, but that wasn't true. When they said South, they meant south of Canada. They used to have a law in this country called reckless eyeballing. What was it called? Reckless eyeballing. What was it called? What's reckless eyeballing? Reckless eyeballing is a black man looking at a white woman. In some states, you can go to jail for looking at a white. That's why you saw some pictures. You see some old pictures when black people, they be putting their head down like that. The black man put their head down like that because you get in trouble for looking at a white woman. Many black men went to their deaths because a white woman cried rape. And that's the way it was in this society. So you lived in a society where you had black people who were the victims of institutionalized racism. Now let me share a couple of things with you. And what I'm going to put on the board is going to be really kind of difficult for me and some of the African American brothers in the class and some of the people online. It may get a little sensitive, but I believe in telling the truth. Do you agree with me that we should tell the truth? Even sometimes it's painful? Okay. Yes, therapeutic. Yeah, honestly, it's therapeutic. If you look at it and you remember the topic of today is learning from the lessons from the life of Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik, el-Shabazz, from according to Quran and Sunnah. I mentioned a verse in the Quran. Allah mentions, Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. O mankind, we created you from a male and female. I'm of the opinion that the healthiest children are those children that have the input of both mother and father. I think it's sad whenever you have a case where a mother raises children by herself or the father raises children by himself. I think ultimately that can have an effect on the child. Would you agree? Would you agree that it is important for a young man to get the input of his father in his life? And this is why, by the way, when brothers and sisters get divorced, and sometimes sister want to make a power play and say you're not going to see your kids, I'm against that. I think it's tragic. Now, consider this. What we're talking about now is we're talking about the context in which Malcolm was born, the kind of world he was born into. Because we're going to see what happened, what made Malcolm tick. Now, a lot of times Muslims, they don't want to talk about race, especially my immigrant brothers. Well, why are you talking about race? Why are you talking about black and white? I'm going to tell you we're talking about black and white because we live in a world that's black and white. We live in a country that's racism, even today, steeped in racism. It is not as bad as it was, but it's still there. Racism is alive in America. Now, let's just go back a little bit, 1970. That's not that long ago. In 1970, 90% of white children lived with both parents. That's pretty good. 90% of white children lived with both parents. So that means they have a healthy environment. Mom is there, dad is there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made men one way, he made women another way. Laysa dhakaru kal-untha, and the male is not like the female is not like the male. The man, he has certain attributes, the woman, they have certain attributes, and together they raise a child. Now, that's 1970. In the same year that 90% of white children live with both parents, 59% of black children live with both parents. 59% of black children live with both parents. Both 1970. What immediately comes to your mind? You have something to write with? You don't have a pen? Is that why you're sitting there not writing? This is my pen, man. I don't lend my pen to people. I'm going to make an exception today, right? Make sure I get my pen back. You remind your brother, make sure I get my pen back, right? I ain't playing with you, man. I will come get you and get my pen, all right? You're welcome. Any thoughts about that so far? What? What you thinking? At that point, the population of the nation or of African Americans, or is it relevant?
Yeah, the nation.
We're talking about percentage. So is it relevant? If we talk about percentage, is it relevant? Is it really that relevant?
No.
Okay. Yes. Alhamdulillah, brothers, we have, as much as we can, if we can talk, because we want the people online to be able to hear.
Yeah.
So we have a mic here. Give me your name again. There, Talib. Go ahead, Talib.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I would look at those two numbers, 90% and 59% respectively, and think about, it'd be easy to say, well, one group, obviously there's a reason why they don't have the
Good.
parents at home. That's
Good.
the easy answer. I think the more difficult answer is to think about cause and effect relationships.
There you go.
And we look at the time as 1970, there's probably a reason why white families have more security to have 90% of the families, quote unquote, intact, and African Americans in 1970.
Talib, excellent. Stop there. Very good. You're right on the right track. Let's go a little further. 1980, 83% of white children living with both parents. 83% of white children living with both parents. 10 years later. At the same time, 10 years later, 1980, 42% of African Americans living with both parents. I'll say it again. 1980, 42% of African Americans living with both parents. That's an incredible figure, isn't it? That's incredible. 42% of African American children live with both parents.
What about 1980 white kids?
83%. 83. 1990. 79% of white children living with both parents. 38% of black children living with both parents. Now, let's stop here. Let's just make some observation. You want to go? I can't stop now? I got to go to 2000? I should do your program? We coming, man. We coming. Now, what's the interesting observation that you're noticing, even among white? They're declining, right? There's a decline. So something is happening in America. But whatever's happening in America is drastically happening to the African American community. And you cannot think that it's going to be a profound effect with everything else that's going on. That's not going to have a profound effect on the African American family, and it will. You will see. And finally, let's just give you one more. Let's just give you 205. Interesting enough, 74% of white children living with both parents. Black people, 35%. 2005. He who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man up front. Now, it is a known fact that you know what percentage of black people represent the population of America? About 12 point something percent. Yet, black men are incarcerated. Black people are incarcerated 7 times more than white people. Black people are inherently evil, right? Right? Huh? Who said yes? Who said yes? Where's my strap? Who said yes? Who said yes? It must be that cameraman. We can't believe that. You can't believe that. You can't believe that black people are inherently evil. You know, black people commit more crime. How would you account for this fact that black people are arrested? Black people are incarcerated 7 times more than white people. How would you account for that? Let's be honest. If you think it's what it is, you tell me, inshallah.
Racial profiling.
Who said racial profiling? What do you mean by that?
If you see somebody who's, if you're white, and if you see somebody black in a nice looking car, you pull them over if you're a cop, or that's the truth.
Excellent. This book, The Rich Get Rich and the Poor Get Prison, you have to read it. Jeffrey Ryman. It is an excellent book. R-E-I-M-A-M, Ryman, Jeffrey Ryman. If anyone wants to read my book, they can, but only in my presence. So you can't take it with you. Huh? New edition is better? Oh, you ordered it, did you? SubhanAllah. But it's really an excellent book. It will show you that let's talk about the process. Black people, it is a known fact, are arrested more than white people. Now, why is that? What's your name, brother? Subhan mentioned a really good point. Now, if the police officer is prejudiced, right? He has a decision to make. There's a white guy, there's a black guy. Let me focus on the black guy. So you're more likely, if you're black, A, to get arrested. B, what comes after arrest? Prison. No. Yeah, who said that? Indictment. Proof positive. What's an indictment? An indictment is an official charge. If you're black, you got a better chance to get A, arrested, B, indicted when you're arrested. It is a proven fact that a lot of white people that get arrested are not indicted. Who makes the determination if you are indicted or not?
The white judge.
No. Grand jury. Could be. Number 3. Arrested, indicted, and then convicted. If you are black, there's a better chance you convicted, not necessarily because you are guilty, but maybe maybe you can't afford a good attorney. There was a guy named OJ. I'm sorry. I don't want to do this to you, but I'm sorry. Remember OJ? Remember OJ? And I want you to be straight now. Don't be honest with me. How many think he killed his wife? Raise your hand. Allah, I know Allahu Alam. I know Allahu Alam. Allahu Alam about everything. Yeah, Allahu Alam. When a person don't want to be committed to Allahu Alam. You don't think he did it?
If he was to do it.
If he were to do it, I would have did it this way. He would know how. Sister, what you think? OJ did it or didn't? Did it or didn't? Yeah. Don't know. What do you think? Huh? You serious? Wow. What you think, man? He did it or what? Who said of course he did? Why you say of course he did? Oh, he said the same thing. But you know what? The fact of the matter, let me ask you a question. Do you think it makes a difference if you have money in this society? Yes. Whether you be convicted or not? Yes. Isn't it a fact that if you have a real good lawyer, which means costs a lot of money, is a better chance you get off? Yes. Come on, that's just the absolute fact. So black people, A, get a better chance of getting arrested. Number 2, get a better chance of getting indicted. Number 3, get a better chance of getting convicted. And number 4? Huh?
They can't afford it.
Jail term. Do you know that a lot of time it's the discretion of the judge how much time you get? He got guidelines. He can give you the max. He can give you something less than that. So if you have a system of racists, and you say, oh, wow, now I don't understand why so many black people, right, are in jail and get more arrested. Now let's say something even more than that. What happens in a society? He who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man up front. What happens in a society where a person can't get a job or can't get the best job, ain't got no money? See, they're more likely to commit crime. Brother comes out of prison, this is a true story. Brother Imam Siraj. Yeah, Siraj. I need a job. Ma'am, I need a job. And then he sits there and says to me, ma'am, I just got out of prison. I need a job. And then he sits down and he starts crying. He said, Imam, I don't want to go back to jail. And what does he mean? Here's a man in this society, like Malcolm, goes to jail. Now, the system is called the Correctional Institute. That's a joke, by the way. Supposed to correct you, right? Okay, you go to jail, you do the time. 10 years in prison because of burglary. You come out of prison, right? You did your time, you did 10 years, right? You paid your price, true? All right. If you paid the price, my question is this. Go to get a job. You want to get a job, right? Got to get a job. You can't be lazy. You got to go get a job, right? Go get a job, right? So the guy goes, comes out of prison, says, sir, can I have a job? You all been to prison, boy? No, I haven't been to prison. Okay, I'll hire you. And go to work. But a month later, yo, boy, come here. You told me you ain't never been to prison. I checked. You've been to prison. Why you lie to me? Why you lie to me? You're fired. Oh, man. I got to get a job. Next time I'll tell the truth. Go to another job. Sir, I can do this work. Can you hire me? I got to ask you a question first. You ever been to jail? Yes, sir. I was in jail. Okay, no problem. I'll call you. Give me your number. You going to get a phone call? He ain't going to get no phone call. And he know he won't get a phone call because that's the way it is. Stigmatized for the rest of your life. You've been to prison. You're ex-con. And that's it. And this is the kind of society that we lived in. And then so when Malcolm came on the scene, it was unbelievable racism. Black people were being murdered. Black people being lynched. Black people couldn't get jobs. Black people not in political office. He who gets behind in the race, and we were behind, and we stayed behind, and we stayed behind, and we stayed behind. Even laws on the books were racist. Rosa Parks. Have you heard the name Rosa Parks? Who's Rosa Parks? Ah! Who's Rosa Parks?
She sat in the front of the bus.
She sat in the front of the bus. Isn't that nice? I love this brother here. Rosa Parks had the audacity to be sitting in a section in the bus where if a white person was standing and there was no seats, by law, she had to give up her seat. And so when a white man came, said, yo, let's go. And she said, you know what, I'm tired. Bus driver came and said, you got to get up out that seat. She refused to do it. And guess what? She was arrested. She was arrested, man. You ride the bus, don't you? Anybody tell you can't sit down? You don't know what it's like, do you? You don't know what it's like to live like that. You're so privileged. We're so privileged. We don't know what it's like. And this is what you're talking about with Malcolm and the Nation of Islam and all of that. And who was the contemporary of Malcolm? Martin Luther King. Whose birthday was? I think he was born 1929. January 15th. April 1968, I think April 4th is assassination. Around April 4th. Now, two men, one a Muslim, one a Christian. One who calls himself Muslim, Malcolm Little. Another one, Martin Luther King Jr. Study their lives. Malcolm's father murdered by the KKK when he's young, house burned on fire, moved from house to house, city to city, all over the country, unstable. Malcolm's mother becomes institutionalized. She goes crazy. She's in an insane asylum. Malcolm goes to live with foster parents, goes from family to family. And then in the 8th grade, we mentioned last week, he dropped out of school. Malcolm drops out of school. What happened?
He starts robbing houses and he starts robbing houses and goes to jail.
What? What is he saying? No, what happened?
That's what he said.
His teacher
8th grade teacher told him,
when he asked, he told her what he wants to become, a lawyer. She told him, you can't.
he.
Oh, I'm sorry. He told Malcolm that, basically there's no way that you're going to become a lawyer. You might as well just become a carpenter. Yeah, that's correct.
Good, very good. Now, discouraged, youngster, 8th grade, discouraged. Oh, but Martin Luther King, he did well in school. Do you know he skipped 2 grades? I think the 9th and the 12th grade. Graduated with honors, Morehouse University, then went to Boston University, PhD. So you got 2, contrast. Now, what happens? Malcolm goes to jail in 1946. From 1946 to 52. He actually was sentenced from 8 to 10 years. He served 6 years, 46 to 52, right? Yeah, 6 years. In the nation, while he was in prison, he hears the teaching of the Nation of Islam. Now, one of the lessons that we're going to learn in this class, I think is going to be a very, very profound lesson, is influence on people. Martin Luther King was influenced by the president of his school, Morehouse. He was a civil rights worker and convinced Martin Luther King to become a minister. Martin Luther King became a minister, ordained minister before he graduated from college. Right before he graduated from college, became an ordained minister. He was born in Atlanta, Georgia. He was born in Omaha, Nebraska. Both of them want the liberation of their people. Malcolm more militant, Martin Luther King more passive resistance, more, if you don't want to say passive, more diplomatic, less militant. Less militant, but powerful. Now, you know what happens? Malcolm learns that Elijah Muhammad has impregnated some of his secretaries and they have babies out of wedlock. Malcolm is I mentioned last week, he's dissatisfied. He has some misgivings, but he still sticks with the Nation of Islam. 1963, November, the death of John F. Kennedy. As I mentioned last week, Malcolm X was told by his leader, Elijah Muhammad, who called himself the messenger of God, that no minister should say anything about the death of John F. Kennedy. Malcolm disobeyed. Malcolm was silenced by his teacher in 1973 and was supposed to be for 90 days silence. And then after that, it looked like Malcolm would not go back to the Nation of Islam. And I'm gonna give you a little bit discussion about that. But in March 1964, in fact, March 8th, 1964, Malcolm breaks away from the Nation of Islam and started an organization called Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Muslim Mosque Incorporated, March 1964.